Hey, you clicked on my video. Appreciate it. Now be sure to like the video and subscribe to the page. Long enough to cover the subject and short enough to keep it interesting. Welcome to Outta My League. I'm Nick Diaz. What some of you may not realize about this LSU team is that the chickens came home to roost on Saturday. See, this LSU team has taken steps forward all season long. They've learned a lot under their new coach, Brian Kelly, and a lot about building a new culture, which was really what this season was all about. They've learned how to win ugly when things are going bad. The Auburn game first. They learned how to have a big bounce-back game after being embarrassed. You won against Florida after being humiliated by Tennessee. You learned how to improve on last week's win, from the Florida game to the Ole Miss game. And you learned how to win big games, not to be too emotional, not to be too overcome by the moment. Alabama. All well and all good, and all are part of a bright future. But the biggest test that you have to face, no matter what, is what happens to people when they reach success. What happens to that? Do you know how you're going to go from being the hunter to being the hunted? See, people change when they finally get that big paycheck. People change when they finally get that job security. They don't know how to be the hunted just yet. And they had to learn that lesson the hard way. They, being LSU, they had to learn that against Texas A&M. Let's be honest with ourselves. This LSU team has not been the same since they beat Alabama. They just haven't. They've been sloppy with the football. They've gone back to having slow starts. The Arkansas game really, in a lot of ways, exposed this team, which was kind of my biggest fear from a schematic standpoint. And I said all of last week, the only thing that can beat LSU this weekend against A&M is LSU. And that's what happened. Was it a look-ahead spot? Maybe. Maybe it was. I don't know. But no excuses. A&M is just horrible. Talented, yes, but horrible. See, I watched the Brian Kelly post-game press conference after the A&M game on Saturday. I've never seen Brian Kelly so frustrated. I've never seen him so flustered. He didn't have an explanation. He was almost lost for words, showing his emotions more than I've ever seen him before. The only thing he really hinted at in his explanation was the team did not really prepare the way that they should have against Texas A&M. Now, he didn't really come out and say that, but I think he was trying to hint at that. And some of that, well, really all of that falls on him as the head coach. Because here's the thing. LSU gave up 275 yards rushing to the 97th ranked offense in the country. 275 yards rushing. You got your ass handed to you. And that is nothing to do with scheme. That is very little to do with even necessarily just talent. That's just you not wanting or caring to be there in College Station. They did, you didn't. That's all that was. I understand that Jayden Daniels lost that fumble and it was a scoop and score. That was huge. I understand there were some iffy calls, but here's the thing. You came to the wrong fucking podcast if you want to hear people complaining about refs. You gave up 250 yards rushing. I will always go back to that. That is simply not wanting to play the game. That's all that was. Well, if Jayden Daniels doesn't fumble that ball in the scoop and score, then maybe that changes things. Maybe it doesn't. But when you give up that many rushing yards, I find that hard to forgive. One play just makes all the difference in the world. Being dominated that badly on the line of scrimmage. Look, one play isn't going to make a huge difference. Maybe it does. But let's be even more honest with ourselves for the moment. This LSU team has overperformed all season long. They have. They are the SEC in the SEC West, and they are SEC West champions. They are not the best roster in the SEC West. They are not. This is not the best roster in the SEC West. This is the most well-coached roster in the SEC West, and this is a team that's earned that title fair and square, but this is not the best roster in the SEC. This team is flawed. It's just that the coaching staff up to this point has gone up to their wits' end in masking those deficiencies. But the problems LSU has had all season long that really haven't changed all that much: lack of depth in the interior defensive line, size on the interior offensive line, and the lack of depth at corner if somebody goes down like Jared Bernard-Converse. You're kind of screwed. You got to move safeties to corners and corners back to safeties. And Jaden Daniels still doesn't see the field very well in certain coverages. And your team also doesn't take enough vertical shots downfield, mostly because you don't have a real game breaker. And when you do, you're not taking those shots. Because Jaden Daniels is prone to being gun shy. As soon as something bad happens, that's what he resorts to. And Tennessee and Florida State really exposed that earlier in the season. And Arkansas also gave everybody else a blueprint on how to stop LSU, how they are currently playing. And you know what happened? All that scheming that the LSU coaches did, all those different game plans that they had, at a certain point, there's no more scheming to be done. The chickens will come home to roost. It's the same thing with Harold Perkins. People were asking, well, Harold Perkins, how was he just totally non-existent in this game? Okay, I'm going to go off and give myself a little bit of credit here. But I said all the way back after the Tennessee game, everybody was saying, oh my God, the coaches, how could you keep Harold Perkins off the field? That was a stupid coaching decision. It's this and that. It's Les Miles-esque. It's like Ed Ogeron. It's so stupid. How could you do that? And I was one of the few, if not the only one, that I had seen defending the coaches on Harold Perkins not playing as much against Tennessee. Now you understand the point, because Harold Perkins can only do, and I'll say it again for those of you who didn't hear me the first time, Harold Perkins can only do so much. He can only do two things right now as a freshman: rush the passer, which he's very good at, and play the QB spy, which he's better than anybody that I've ever seen. Anyone. The issue, though, is that you rely on the rest of your team to be in those second and long, third and long positions for Harold Perkins to go do his thing. Harold Perkins, he can't cover wide receivers because you nickel him out. He can't play middle linebacker because most true freshmen cannot. I don't care how talented they are. That's something he never really did in high school to begin with. And that's the problem. A&M was in second and short and third and short all damn game long. That's why. That's why I defend the coaches. The coaches are trying to protect the players, and at a certain point, the team got figured out. And they did. Now, I know I've just depressed you a whole bunch just now, but this is bigger picture. You probably weren't going to beat Georgia anyway. And this A&M game shows kind of why. Now, that's not saying that it's impossible, but let me give credit to some LSU fans right now. I am shocked. Matter of fact, I am very shocked that many of you LSU fans are showing great maturity in this moment. Most of you are taking this loss, I'd say, rather well. Not all of you, but most of you. I don't really hear anybody saying, fire Brian Kelly. I don't hear anybody saying, oh, I'm doubting the Brian Kelly hire once again. Every LSU fan that I've seen has said something to the effect of, hey, you know what? If we would have said before the season, hey, you're 9-3 and SEC West champions, I would have taken it. This is a rebuilding year. I'm happy where we are. Take our lumps along the way. This is a successful season. We've exceeded expectations. I am proud of you, LSU fan base, for showing that kind of maturity for your new head coach. Having a mature, great perspective on things, because really, that's the correct perspective to have. And look, I don't mean to shit on all LSU fans, because it's not all LSU fans that have this problem, but let's be honest, there is always that group of LSU fans who have to act like the fucking turd in the punch bowl and make everyone else miserable, myself included. They're not doing that. I don't see them coming. Now look, losing sucks and you never want to lose, and most of you hate A&M and that's why it stings. I'm going to be honest with you though, I don't really hate A&M. Matter of fact, I don't hate A&M at all. I get why some LSU fans do. Texas Tigers, I'm looking at you. I just do not. A&M hasn't won a damn thing in the SEC. They haven't. All right. I look personally, Nick Diaz, I look at A&M as a slightly more threatening Arkansas. They have more resources, more chance to win, but that's it. They haven't won a damn thing, and they play spoiler, and they play up for LSU. I hate Florida no matter what. And I dislike Alabama. I don't necessarily hate them. And recently I like to shit on Notre Dame media because why the fuck not? Other than that, I don't care. But also think about it this way. For those of you who are still upset that you lost to A&M. let's flip the Alabama game and the A&M game completely. Let's say you lost to A&M in the first Saturday of November, and you beat Alabama and won the SEC West in the last Saturday in November, the way you did. You flip the two games. One's in the first week of September, one's in the last week of September. You feel better, don't you? It's not what happened, it's just the sequence in which that happened. The loss came earlier in the season, you'd feel a little bit better. You beat Alabama this weekend instead, hey, you're riding high. See, this is what I hate about college football. Slight tangent, I'm sorry. We are too married to things week to week. We are too married to things that happened the last we saw. This doesn't change Brian Kelly's future. We look at every coach. Look, if you look at every coach that leaves a job for another job, the previous job that they just left, it's a little bit worse. Notre Dame went 8-4. And the new team that they just took over gets a little bit better. LSU, 9-3, SEC West champs. Good sign. Good sign. Think about it this way. The fact that this team got exposed by A&M in some ways shows you how good of a coach Brian Kelly and his staff are. They really are. It's not like you got Caleb Williams out of the transfer portal at LSU. It's a ragtag team of transfer guys who have overperformed and have been coached up. If anything, it should show you, man, we really have some roster deficiencies and we've gotten to this point. Bravo, Brian Kelly. So as far as momentum and what this does for A&M and what this does to derail LSU, it doesn't. It's a ticker parade for A&M. I really could give a shit about A&M under Jimbo. Okay, he just fired his offensive coordinator. Great. His offensive coordinator wasn't the problem. Jimbo calls plays. This is a parade that A&M and Jimbo will have for 1 week. This was a one-off for Brian Kelly in November. He's 45-1 against teams he's favored against. Now 45-2. 45-1 going into that A&M game against teams he's favored over. That's a one-off. And those one-offs usually happen in year 1 or 2 of a rebuild. This was one of them. All right. I'm over to the A&M game. Moving on. LSU will now not go into a New Year's Six bowl game unless they beat Georgia. Sucks, but that's just part of it. We have all week to talk about the matchup with Georgia, because a 3-loss SEC team is not getting into the college football playoff. But early questions: can LSU beat Georgia? Yes, of course it's possible. Have you watched college football lately? Shit happens. Am I leaning towards an LSU victory? No, because look, before the A&M game, I just didn't feel confident about it. Now, the A&M game hasn't changed my mind at all. It's just sort of reinforced what I had been telling LSU fans before the A&M game. But here's a bigger question. Do I think LSU will play harder than normal against Georgia and keep it closer than normal because they lost to A&M in the way they did? Yeah, I kind of do. I hate to be the whole psychology professor, which we know happened last time I tried to do that. But early matchup preview, I like LSU on the perimeter in this game, but I don't like LSU on the line of scrimmage. LSU has played 3 teams that were better than them on the line of scrimmage. Florida State, Tennessee, A&M hasn't gone great. That doesn't mean LSU can't keep it close, because I think they can. It's just a matter of how close. But this was a bump in the road. It's a sucky bump in the road, but that's all it is. The bus is still moving ahead. Thanks for listening to Out of My League. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Or follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok in the description link below.